And I'm back with Scott Carney, the Director of Wine Education at the International Culinary Center in the heart of New York, right in Soho. I think America's #1 restaurant destination, but also America's #1 wine city because of the wine experiences that you can have there. And in particular, Scott and his team of 11 master sommeliers have trained many of the country's best sommeliers out in restaurants now. Among your alumni, wine-wise, Scott, who comes top of mind for you?
Well, the best news story is a gentleman named Roland Miku, who came out of our program in California and who in Aspen several weeks ago, where I was examining, became a master sommelier, starting, of course, with our curriculum. And so he is living proof that what we're doing is pretty good, and we're hoping to have him be part of our program in the future to give back a little bit to the program and to teach people and mentor people much in the same way that he was mentored towards the accreditation.
So did he go from having no wine knowledge all the way to master sommelier in whatever it is, 10
right,
weeks?
Right, and those first 2 classes, or those first 2 accreditations which he earned, the introductory and the certified, took place at our West Coast school.
Wow, that's great. And the West Coast school is close to Ridge Vineyards, is it not? In Sonoma or Napa?
Actually, it's in the South Bay, and Ridge is local, and we like to make that our school field trip whenever we can. But we go to a number of different places who have all been very generous in receiving the students and teaching us the Vidi-Vini part of things.
Wow, I would have loved to have those kind of school trips when I was younger, but I guess I wasn't of drinking age. So tell me, Scott, what do you think are the 3 most important traits for a master sommelier or any really professional sommelier?
Well, I think obviously it's a love for what you do, #1, but it's the joy of being part of people's good times and trying to add something to that in the way, in the spirit of hospitality. And the program, I mean, to try to make this simple, if you will, focuses on the 3 different things I mentioned earlier, theory, service, and tasting, and those are the things that you try to share with people. You try to, again, in a restaurant setting, the customer is supposed to be king for the day, and you try to make them feel that way, and you have a number of tools at your disposal to do so. And I think the invisible service is really part of the practical thing, anticipating needs and all. The tasting portion is to really be able to describe things in which the guest might take an interest, and you're weaving all the time the theory and context into it so that there's a story spun, or that some indelible impression of the restaurant, your restaurant, is left on the customer, because at the end of the day, the repeat or the return diner is crucial to the survival of a business like this.
Absolutely. And what, from your experience, both in the field and now teaching, give me your top 3 tips for diners in terms of choosing from a restaurant list. Let's assume they have a knowledgeable sommelier, but what beyond that, and talking to that sommelier, what are some good tips to keep in mind when you're trying to find a good bottle on the list?
My game has always been in a restaurant to surrender. And it has to do with the waiter, with the sommelier, and so forth. I think if you outline, if you give them enough rough information about what you like and what you don't like, the value added is really in their bringing you or delivering the things that you like, understanding or getting a read on who you are and so forth, asking the right questions. And then that's what makes it special to me. I don't come in expecting that I know everything about it. They know much more about their restaurant than do I. So it's always been for me a bit of surrender, and there's a leap of faith in that, but for the most time it's proven to be a very workable and successful strategy.
Okay, and what about for establishments that may not have a really knowledgeable sommelier? How do you navigate the list there, or how do you help guide the server? What kind of information would you give the server, or what would you be looking for on the list if you don't have that expert touch?
Well, I'm an exceptional consumer in this regard, in that I come in with a great deal of knowledge, so that I'm different than an average person that might go out some, but might not be coming in with the 30 years of experience that I have. I'm looking, usually for producers' names. I'm looking for ingredients, on the menu, which at least strike me as local and seasonal and so forth. And so I'm trying to negotiate the menu based upon what it's realistic to assume is, at a fresh stage. We've all heard of the seasonal restaurants and the farm to table and so forth. It never hurts, especially with the internet right now, to get a little bit of information, read a review or two and so forth in preparation for your successful dining experience. But those are the general things that I try to do. Know a little bit about what I'm getting into, what the PR might be on the place, the items to pay attention to on the menu. And from a wine standpoint, you're always in a particular price range that you want to work with. And without the benefit of a sommelier, you're a little bit on your own. But I like to, again, at the end of the day, it's so much about the producers, and to be able to remember a couple of producers that you like, whose styles you admire, and so forth. I think is the best way to come in. A prepared diner is a good diner.
Yes, absolutely. It should be like the Boy Scout motto of restaurant diners or something. Okay, and what trends or changes are you seeing these days in either restaurant wine lists, restaurant service, sommeliers themselves? What's changing? What's happening?
That's hard really to say. There's been the moves into the quartinos. There've been the different formats. One thing that interests me is the interest in sort of the carbon footprint and so forth, and that we're starting to see wines being served in different vessels, and hopefully that that benefit in not having to produce a label or buy a cork and so forth will result in, at the margin, better wine at slightly lower prices.
So are they buying kegs and then serving it kind of wine on tap?
And bag-in-the-box, tap, things like that, where the technology is such that you can fight against the influx of oxygen and maintain a fairly high-quality product in those types of formats that would have, earlier have been considered, unfathomable, and only the location for inexpensive and cheap wines. I think the wines are getting better in this format as people are trying to push the envelope, and again, with the side consideration or the corollary, the sort of the carbon footprint or the ecological responsibility.
Huh. Are you seeing more women, or is that sort of evened out now, as sommeliers, I mean?
Or women. There are a lot of women interested in the programs and doing very well, good tasters, good studiers, and so forth. I think our court has a large predominance of men in the program right now, but there are a lot of women taking the program, following through. And I think if you look at the Master of Wine program, I think there's a higher percentage of women in the Masters of Wine program as a percentage of the present-day Masters. So women are definitely coming in into both of these programs and taking important positions.
Okay. Now let's talk about your own experiences, Scott. What has been one of your most memorable experiences, wine-wise, while you were working in a restaurant?
Well, there have been a lot of the things that I can talk about, the flying corks, and I've spilled wine on people, let me assure you. But the oddest thing that took place for me that I think is kind of fun to share with people, because it's kind of horrific, but it really points up how bad wine service can be and why you need people like this in a restaurant setting, has to do with a little pizza place that I went to where you could bring your own wine, and we had brought some wine and we're being served the wine, but we noticed to the left of us some people who brought in a sparkling wine, and they got it chilled down. They were eating their pizza and having a good time and so forth, and then they finally called for it to be open, and the guy opened it, and as he approached the table to serve it to them, it started to froth up, such that it went like this. And then he went over and served the wine to these people. And I went to my wife, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" And it stunned me, and it will forever sit in my mind as one of the worst service examples I've ever seen.
Did you give him a business card, or?
No, but I should have. But I was ready to run out of the restaurant.
Horrors. Okay, well, you're saving the world from that kind of experience. And what about your most memorable bottle of wine? What do you remember, and where were you? Who were you with?
Well, I have a good one for that. If I was a fledgling wine aficionado in my early days, and I've been married now 31 years, and I honeymooned in Portugal, and we were intent on getting up to Oporto and so forth from Lisbon into where we flew, and we're about about an hour south of Oporto when we come upon this forest, and we end up stumbling upon a place called Busaco. And Busaco is this great forest, has wonderful history. I think the English and the Portuguese turned back Napoleon's invasion of the Iberian Peninsula at this point in a textbook military move and so forth. But Busaco is also part of the Alexandre de Almeida hotel group, and they have a tremendous cellar there. This is in the Bairrada region, and these wines are not exported, and we just stumbled upon this place that has this incredible legacy of winemaking, both reds and whites, with thousands of bottles in the cellar dating back to the 40s and so forth. And on that particular honeymoon night, we tasted a 1958 Busaco Tinto, if you will, and absolutely memorable. I managed to bring the bottle home with me, and for obvious reasons now, being a honeymoon and being just stumbling upon this magical neo-Manuelan palace in a very lush and old tree forest was an absolutely magical moment.
Wow, that is a fairy tale. That's great. And final question before we taste something together. If you could share a glass of wine with anyone in history, living or dead, who would it be and what would the wine be?
Wow, that question gets kicked around a lot. And so you start thinking, well, do I want to drink some sherry with Shakespeare, or do I want to drink some Chambertin with Napoleon? But I think that to kind of be realistic and to play into another kind of fantasy, if you will, would be maybe to drink some 1985 Richebourg with Henri Jaillet, who, as many people know, is considered a real icon in Burgundy. I'm a big fan of red and white Burgundies, and it would be great to share a glass of that incredible wine with him and to have him talk about the wine. And that would be really rich for me.
Absolutely. It would be really rich for all of us, given the price of his wines. But as long as he was buying, I'd be right there with you.
Well, this is theoretical, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, totally. Now, this isn't so theoretical. Tell me about the wine you've selected for us to taste today.
Well, that was a little piece of work, wasn't it? Well, it's a Bastianich wine. I'm also reading Restaurant Man, which I recommend for anybody in the industry. But
and who's that by? Is it by Joe Bastianich?
Joe Bastianich, yeah. It's a little like a Tony Bourdain book, so you have to accept that he's a profane man, but it's again a really great read.
Makes it more colorful, and he's a son of New York, is he not? I mean, he has Italian heritage, but he's a New Yorker.
Absolutely. And so we have his Fuilano here, or it's called Adriatico, but it's the Fuilano grape, and it's in that very interesting area where it's Slovenia and Croatia and Italy and so forth. So it has a background of being not just an Italian wine, but a very mixed culture and history, been part of the Habsburg Empire and so forth, but it is informed by a lot of different tradition. And so we have this wine today, and I thought we'd try it together.
Absolutely. Oh, that's lovely. It's a great summer wine. Then again, I don't think too many wines are out of season in our cellar, but this is very fresh.
Fresh. It has a little bit of kind of a nutty note to it, maybe a little pear, a little apricot. But
what
really
is the nutty note? Is that what's giving that? Is it just the grape character, or?
I think it has to do with the grape character. It might sometimes have to do, we know some about yeast, but we don't know everything about yeast, and I know that this sits on its lees for a little bit. They do what the French refer to as bâtonnage, so there's some frequent stirring of the yeast to bring in a little extra flavor or another layer of complexity to the wine. So it might be attributable to that also. But great fruit notes to it, a sort of a little sort of a depth of flavor on the palate, and a nice weight on the palate, a medium weight, but really nice acidity in the finish, which again bodes so well for its pairing with food. Absolutely,
I love a clean finish with the acidity. They're like the little metal scrubbers that prepare you for the next bite of food. What would be some of your ideal pairings with this wine, Scott?
Well, I know that there's a lot of prosciutto and so forth in the area, but I think that you could probably use, with seafood, of course, this would be fine again because it has that great reset button of acidity, and it could possibly even go with some Asian dishes and so forth. It has a nice soft palate feel, which I think would work with some spicy food.
Absolutely. I love that term, reset button. Can I use that?
Speak with Mr. Kaminsky.
Oh, okay. Right. We'll get sign off. This is terrific, Scott. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been delightful chatting with you, very educational. So I'll post links to the program, the school, for anyone who's interested, because I know there are a lot of folks who'd love to take some of the courses that you folks offer there.
Thank you very much. A pleasure speaking with you, too.
All right. Cheers, Scott.